This is Food for Thought with Deborah Walker. Today on Food for Thought, I have Amanda Weller, who actually doesn't live that far away from me. And she's a BodyTalk practitioner. And I actually know nothing about BodyTalk. I know. I read for England. And I hadn't even come across BodyTalk. And so I thought, I've got to get Amanda on to tell us all about it. Tell me all about it so I can have a conversation. So hello, Amanda. Welcome to Food for Thought.
Hello, Debbie, and thank you very much for having me here.
It's absolutely
I'm delighted to come and talk about BodyTalk. I can talk about it forever.
Perfect. You know, with me being from the north of England, you know, we're hardwired to talk. So effectively, that sounds like a good interview for me. Now, I'm going to jump straight in and ask what is a really small question, but actually will have a massive answer, which is, what is BodyTalk? I know. How did it come about, and actually who developed it?
Okay, so BodyTalk is a fabulous whole healthcare system, and it works with our natural our body and mind's natural instinct to get into the best state that it can at any given time. It was developed by an Australian called John Veltheim, who is an acupuncturist and a chiropractor, and he developed it in the mid-90s. He ran a very successful clinic in Australia, and he had issues himself that he was unable to resolve, and so he thought, right, I've got better set about doing something about this. And so with his vast knowledge of many different systems, he created what has now become the BodyTalk system, which is now taught and used in, I should have looked this up before I came on air, actually. 30, 40 countries now worldwide. I mean, it's developed really quickly. It's spread very quickly. And so basically the BodyTalk system encompasses aspects from all sorts of different modalities. So you've got knowledge and principles from, for example, applied kinesiology, from traditional Chinese medicine, from acupuncture, chiropractic and osteopathic, and what else? We've got also, there's a bit of tapping, which is actually an ancient yoga thing, which now through physics we understand what's actually happening there. And this is all combined with the latest understandings from science, from mathematics, applied mathematics and quantum physics. And so continually evolving, fabulous healthcare system. It's not at all static, and every time there is some, major new scientific development that, as body talkers, we think we can use to help our clients, it's incorporated in the system, and which is something I love about it, because I will be learning for life. So yes, in a broad sweep, that's what BodyTalk is. It's a very gentle treatment to receive, but its effects can be really life-changing and profound. It's a consciousness-based healthcare system, energy system, and you can, as a practitioner, I can work either in person with somebody here in my clinic, or I can work at a distance worldwide, with people work. Some body talkers work with plants and all sorts of different ways of working with BodyTalk. It can be used to work with teams when members come and go and everything's all up in the air and unsettled. There are many, many different applications, but the mostly we, I suppose, use it as a healthcare system, but it can be used in many ways. And wow. I love it. I feel very lucky to have discovered it and to be working with it.
How did you discover it?
Well, I have a lovely friend who has a brain tumour, and she started using BodyTalk, and her side effects melted away, and she's very sociable, and she ended up telling a lot of her friends, who went off and had BodyTalk, all for different reasons. And so through her, I kept hearing of all these extraordinary results. And at the time, I was a reflexologist, and I was very strident in my belief that I didn't want to be one of these people who dabbled in lots of different therapies. I just wanted to be a good reflexologist, which was a real lesson in never say never. Anyway, so my moment came when I had a regular reflexology client who asked if I knew of a hypnotherapist because she had a phobia she wanted to deal with, and I didn't. But I suggested that BodyTalk might be able to help her, but I couldn't recommend it really because I hadn't ever experienced it. And we chatted, and she ended up saying, well, if you go for a session, maybe I will. So I did. I went off and had a session, and it was just out of interest. The practitioner who I worked with knew that I was just there really to give it a go, see what it was all about. And I have to admit, at the time, my children were quite little and I was flying off the handle quite a lot. And it was after a few weeks, I suddenly realised that although life was still erupting around me, my reaction to it was totally different. I had what I can only describe as a calmness in my core, just completely different reaction. And that I had that session in November 2007. So by when did I become a practitioner? By the summer of 2008, I was a practitioner. Wow. So I got onto it quickly. You know, it was a profound change. And yes, so here I am now. Yeah.
So it's been a personal journey as well.
Oh, definitely. But I think you'd find that with any BodyTalk practitioner, actually. There's always a story behind it. But as with so many healthcare practitioners, I think, do you not find that in your interviews? Yeah. So
the part of the interesting story at the beginning is normally how they found, their career choice.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's very nice to fall into it later on and having had other things, happening. And a lot of practitioners do find that. So, yes. So I feel very lucky to be working with it and not to be one of these people getting off a train looking grey at 8 o'clock in the evening. Yes.
Indeed. But at least you'd have BodyTalk to be able to deal with that.
And actually I do, of course. That does come into my clinic. Yeah, that's definitely, stress is a big thing, isn't it? Yes, people come in for all sorts of different reasons. They tend to come in, what do I have at the moment? It sort of often tends to go in phases with different things. Depression, stress and work are big things as well, but also physical things and things that people would think of as being issues that they'll have to live with. They just happen and that's it. You're stuck with it. Like arthritis, for example, is a classic. And actually, that's not the case. The pain and mobility can be, restored. The body can really turn these things around if it's given a chance. I think sometimes we just get a bit overloaded and need a bit of a boost in the right direction, which BodyTalk can help. People's own systems get sorted out, really sort themselves out.
So how would it do that with the likes of arthritis, for instance?
Well, I mean, with any reason why somebody comes here, although they come with a specific issue, like, for example, arthritis, the session itself relies on following that person's body's own knowledge about what it needs, its innate wisdom. So you have things are addressed in the right order, in the right way at each separate session. So, and everything is so interconnected. So it may be that the session focuses on things that may not obviously to the layperson seem to be connected, but actually they may need to be dealt with first. And so a session is unpredictable as far as content goes, but the predictable thing is that it follows what that person needs at each separate session, which is, I think, why it's so effective and which was one of its really strong points as a system.
So is it very much like a delayering approach that might go on?
A what approach?
Like a delayering of the issues.
Yes, definitely BodyTalk does get to the root causes. So rather than just superficially dealing with symptoms, if you can actually get underneath and remove whatever it is issue, then yes. So absolutely, that's exactly what's going on.
Now, explain what exactly you're doing in a session with people, because this is what I'm not clear about.
Yes, it's actually, I tend to explain it quite simply to my clients. It's a bit like, well, the first thing to understand is that everything is in communication with everything else within us on every level. So you're talking, and so we can address every level. So you've got the physical, the emotional, the mental, the spiritual. There's this constant flow of communication within our whole being. And so, as I've mentioned, what happens in a session is it gives that person's whole system the chance to come up with what it knows are the priorities at that particular time. And it's a bit like shining a light of awareness or consciousness on the different items that can pop up. And so in effect, it's a bit like creating a maths formula. So we might we sort of bob around in the session. So we might link from a knee to an organ, to a memory, to a chakra, I mean, there are a myriad of different things that could pop up in a session, but it's really a question of shining a light of awareness on these different things. So I would chat through these different items as they come up. And if I'm seeing somebody in person, or if it's a distance thing, I tend to record it and then email it as an attachment, or you could do it over Skype, whatever somebody wants. And then once you can't move around on the charts anymore, backwards or forwards, there's a bit of tapping, which is the ancient Hatha yoga technique, and it's a bit of gentle tapping on the head to get your whole system to recognize these new and improved communication links, and then a bit of tapping over the heart to get the body to store them. And in its most basic form, really that's all that happens as far as the client is concerned. And it's so it's a very gentle technique to use, but as I say, the results can be really profound for people.
Are you actually physically touching the individual? Because so you're tapping on them, and
I do. Yes, if somebody's with me, a bit like with kinesiology, I set up a yes/no response with their wrist usually, or if I'm working with a child, maybe the child is sitting on my table reading a book with the mother, and then I might sort of use the ankle as a muscle testing. So it's a yes/no response, which helps me check that I'm on the right track as I'm bobbing around my various charts. Yeah.
Okay.
So, but there's no sort of hard, there's no massage. There are techniques, but there's no hard, clicky, pummeling, massagey things. It's more focus rather than, it would just be focus rather than anything sort of hard and physical.
So focus in regards to setting an intention.
Yes. And so what you've got is the client's, a body and holds the client's wisdom about what they need in the session, and so you've got their whole life energy there, and then I have so it's a sort of combination of my learnt stuff and the intuition and awareness that I use through something called the Mindscape system, which a lot of body talkers use, which enables us to combine the learned logical left brain stuff with the more intuitive, creative right brain, and which is also the technique that allows us to do distance sessions, for example. Yeah.
Okay, so what's the difference between this in emotional freedom technique and actually using kinesiology or Psych K? What is actually, although Psych K doesn't do the tapping, but what's the difference?
I don't know enough about all these different systems to be able to answer that with enough information from the other system's perspective. Yeah. But the BodyTalk system can address anything and everything, and so there are techniques and tools to be able to get at everything. It is a complete whole healthcare system. So there aren't aspects that are sort of out of reach, if you like.
Okay. So for instance, if I came to you, run me through a typical session so I can understand it, because I'm still struggling to understand exactly what you do, you see, and I'm fascinated in regards to what you might do, because it's obviously a real mix of the Eastern medicine with the acupuncture points and acupressure points in many respects, and then other aspects of the body's communication in there, and then you've put, as you say, the tapping in there. I'm just wondering, if I came to you with, say, a frozen shoulder, where would you start? What sort of conversation would you potentially have with me? And then what would you be doing with me? And would I be on a couch? Would I be sat there? Would I be standing? Just let me understand the session.
Okay. Yes. Well, when somebody first arrives, they have the inevitable intake form. So I chat to them about everything that's gone on with their health and their general lifestyle. And if, for example, there was a frozen shoulder, I would talk to them about that and find out what was happening when that all sort of came up in their life. I would also obviously sort of check the mobility of the shoulder before the session and just see what range of movement they had, so that we had a bit of comparison when they get, after the session. So I would always explain about the session, how it would work, and then they would be lying, if they're comfortable to do this, they would lie on their back on my couch, and so a session would vary in length, but I allow an hour so that we've got plenty of time to chat before and chat after, and to do the session in a nice relaxed way. And then I would just go, and I sit beside them. I hold their wrist, which is where I set up my yes/no muscle testing response, and go, and I just work around my charts. There's a particular sort of a way that I work around my chart. I ask my questions silently because often we're working at a more subtle level than the conscious mind, but I always explain everything that's coming up in a session because it's the client's session, obviously. And so I just talk them through the different items as they come up, so as I mentioned, there are a myriad of different things that can come into the session. We might be dealing with environmental factors. It could be to do with the family. It could be body chemistry. It could be circulatory. It could be all sorts of different things. But if it's a shoulder, it could be very stress related, all sorts of things, of course, but I can't predict what comes up. That's what's different probably to a lot of other things. It's just totally led by the client's body and mind's knowledge about how the session should flow.
And there is, only yesterday I was talking to a colleague about how one of the new cancer drugs that's coming out is actually basically allowing the body to use its innate immune system to effectively heal itself. So there is more and more evidence coming out in scientific research that the body has this ability. It has and I truly believe we have an innate wisdom to actually heal ourselves, and all we need to do is put the right things in place.
Absolutely. Well, in fact, interestingly, I was on the newest wonderful BodyTalk course that's just come out, all to do with body ecology, and it was just based in Guildford, so just up the road. Very lucky that it was, people flying in from all over the world, and John Veltheim and this other BodyTalk practitioner who used to be involved in the Human Genome Project has now created this fabulous extra tool, I suppose, or awareness for us as body talkers, based on the Human Microbiome Project. Have you heard of that?
Yes.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Fabulous stuff. So there's all this research, which, every month there's masses of new papers and research. So she's working to bring that all to an understanding and a sort of a level that we can use in BodyTalk. And it's just fabulous stuff, because it does mean that where medicine is now thinking, oh my goodness, what do we do with all of this new, how do we work with all of this, because it's thrown a lot of things completely on their head. As body talkers, we have the tools to be able to use it straight away, and it just has profound implications, and it's very exciting. So, for example, this whole thing about natural healing and the cancer drugs using, promote, with a view to actually boosting our own natural healing. Yes, it's got to be the way to go. definitely.
Well, this sounds like it's basically tapping into the work of Becker and Selder, who wrote The Body Electric, James Oshman, who work, and the likes of Donna Eden. It's just pulling all of that together, and effectively
Absolutely.
It sounds like it's touching on the quantum physics.
Oh, it is. I know, very much so. I mean, quantum physics is very much a big part of the BodyTalk system. So it's all that sort of top-down rather than bottom-up sort of idea of dealing with things. Before anything changes, it's the energy, it's the consciousness, and then everything else filters down, which is why the BodyTalk system, works as it does, because it's working very much with how we actually function. I think we're still at the pre-nursery school, a stage of understanding really how we function, but we are, utilizing what we know so far, and with excellent results.
It's astonishing, isn't it? The body's true innate wisdom that we totally hold, because fundamentally, like you say, I think we don't know anywhere near the amounts about our body and its ability that we actually think we do, particularly in medicine.
No, I think you're completely right. But often, as well, it's very basic things. It's we in our Western society, we have a very loud mind. It's all left brain learned stuff, and the mind is such a big force for most of us, and we have a gut feeling, but often we ignore that. It's like our internal traffic lights as well. So I think things are beginning to shift, and people are beginning to really start becoming a bit more aware and wanting to use that, which all ties in obviously with our self-healing and living as in a way that is healthy.
Well, we've moved far away from that in so many respects. And I do think people are, you talk about gut feeling. I think people just know intuitively that actually the way the majority of people live in now is totally out of balance, and actually is not feeding us as I should say, isn't nurturing us on a level which is actually enabling us to be truly healthy and have optimized health.
No, I think that's very true. But so actually, when people have BodyTalk, for example, they start to get a greater sense of self-awareness. And so this is another aspect. People will come inevitably with something probably physical, but not necessarily physical. It could be mental, it could be emotional, but part of it is educational in a way, because people will have these, yes, that makes so much sense, as something comes up in the session, or they'll go away and find that they're dealing with things differently. I had a conversation yesterday actually with somebody who, it turns out, had a BodyTalk session quite a few years ago, and at the time she was in a job that she was deeply, she knew she wasn't in the right place, but she couldn't quite work out what needed to be done. But she reckons, as a result of her BodyTalk session, that she got a sort of a clarity and was able to change things in a way that now she's running her own business. She's much happier. She's everything. She's shifted in many respects in her life, and she puts all that down to BodyTalk. Actually, just going back to arthritis, there's a lovely story of somebody I worked with who had really bad arthritic ankles, and she came to see me probably only about 2 or 3 times. The first time she hobbled, my clinic actually is upstairs, and she got to my room, and poor thing, she sat down, and once I chatted to her, she lay down on my table, and we started the session, and the very first thing that came up with her was something emotional, and she said, I don't do emotions. I just looked at her and I thought, well, I've got to go somewhere. Look at your poor ankles. Anyway, so I did that session, and she literally got up and felt different. It was a lot of sort of and she came back for another session or 2, and then she went back. She didn't live in the country at the time, and then I bumped into her about a year later, and she was a different person. It turns out she had sorted out her personal life. She'd moved house. She hadn't had. Oh, I forgot to tell you. She was. She'd already had one ankle operated on and was due to have the other one done, but she couldn't face being in a wheelchair and immobile for as long, so she'd been putting it off. Anyway, she'd lost loads of weight. She'd never had that other operation, and she had a dog who she was walking miles every day, and I mean, just completely transformed. Absolutely extraordinary. So this is, a lovely story to illustrate what can happen when, just with a little, body talk boost, things can just shift. It's wonderful.
It's fascinating, isn't it? When I did my Psych K course, I went to support myself. So I originally didn't do it to train as a practitioner. I went on to train as a practitioner, but not at first. And right. I remember going into work after the weekend, and the first thing that someone said to me was, "Have you had a facelift over the weekend?" You look like you've dropped 10 years off your face. And I felt like someone had taken my skin off, and almost like this heavy coat, and it had almost like I shed it.
Yeah.
And I see that these energy therapies are incredibly valuable on, as you say, so many different levels, because they are a holistic system. They will work on the mental, the physical, the emotional, the spiritual.
Absolutely, and it's all intimately connected. It's everything affects everything else, and so that's why using a system that is able to address on any level is just so fantastic, because it's like, in a way, having, with BodyTalk, I can't really talk for any other system, but I feel it's a bit like having lots of different windows and doors into the same room, so whatever's appropriate can be used. It's fabulous.
Now, you were trained as a reflexologist prior to this.
I did, yes.
So if someone wants to train in this, how do they go about learning it? Do you have to be, I'm actually assuming that you don't have to be trained as an acupuncturist, a chiropractor, or anything like that, to kind of bring it all together. I'm assuming that right.
No, actually, it's an incredibly easy system to learn, and that's what's so wonderful about it. I mean, anybody can learn it if they want to. The fundamentals course is based on 4-day courses, and you're given a whole lot of information, and you practice, and then you go away and you find lots of friends and family and guinea pigs who you can practice on. And then, if you want to go off and be a practitioner, then you have to redo other courses, do other courses, and there are exams and all of that, and you go down that normal route. But it's an easy system to learn, which is one of its strengths. I mean, and even when you just have the fundamentals course, you can still do fabulous work without having all the advanced levels that you can work towards. So it's I just think it's fantastic. I'm just so pleased to be working with it.
Now, you've just said guinea pigs, and that's basically the people who you can practice on, but not the animal. But actually, I was reading that you can actually do this with animals, and people do train to work with animals, don't they?
Nice link, Debbie.
I know.
Yes. Yes. No, there is animal talk. I haven't actually done animal talk, but I have worked with animals, just using the normal body talk that I work with. That's actually next on my hit list, I have to say. So yes, but it's fabulous. It can be very good for working with animals. There's lots of information and videos and things out there on YouTube and on the BodyTalk system website. If people are interested in finding out more, there are lots of little video links explaining all about BodyTalk, and with lots of good clips and things. So yes, if anybody's interested, it's well worth looking at all of that. I've worked with one exciting thing. I worked with an ex-racehorse that was found on abandoned on a scrub land outside Athens. Oh. And I know, just dreadful. Anyway, I did a bit of distance work with this horse, and the physio and the vet out there couldn't believe how it came on. So you can use it in so many different ways. Yeah. And in fact, the woman who was riding the horse at the time, they did their first event and won it. And people said they couldn't believe that this racehorse had, seemed to come back from the dead. So that was yes, that was a nice one.
Well, you say this thing, but actually animals I find are really fascinating when you do distant work, any sort of healing work on them. I had a friend, as my dog isn't very well at the moment, and actually I've had friends who've been doing quite a lot of work, and they've said to me, how's the dog been today? And I would say, actually she's been a bit more upbeat, she's been running around and like an old puppy again. And they go, no, we sent some healing last night. I was like, and I actually see the dog respond to it, and even when they come and do the hands-on work, I see the dog respond. So when people say they poo-poo distant or healing work in general, I have to look at my dog and know that actually she has no idea what's happening to her.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? I mean, if it was something where they needed to know what was happening, then nothing would be happening, would it?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a very good example of how when you see animals respond, it illustrates how it can work. There's no necessity to be aware of it happening.
No, because I used Bach's flower remedies when I first got my animal, my dog.
Yes.
And because she'd been treated very, very badly. She was in a very poor state when I actually got her.
Oh.
And I couldn't leave her without her getting extremely distressed. And I used Bach's flower remedies, and they worked an absolute dream. So, and the animal had no idea, she had no idea what was happening to her. Fascinating, all of the energy work, really. Nowadays.
Yes, yeah. I think that sort of idea with dogs with, with separation anxiety and all that sort of thing needs to be publicised more, because people don't know that it's out there, I don't think, do they?
Okay, Amanda, this has been a lovely short interview about BodyTalk and a little bit about energy therapy. Tell people about where to find you, where to find your website and your contact details.
Thank you very much. So my website is quantumbeing, quantumbeing.co.uk, and all my details and contact details are on there, so that's probably the easiest thing to do. And yes, thank you very much. I've really enjoyed it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie.